Hey everybody, Steve here at Harbor Lawn Memorial Park in Costa Mesa, California, not far from the beach and not far from where Marcia, my daughter, lives here in Newport Beach. In fact, Marcia and my son-in-law Bobby, they're going to come and join me here in just a little bit. We're going to look for a gravesite here. Actually, this cemetery has two different names. It's Harbor Lawn Memorial Park and also Mount Olive. I'm actually in the Mount Olive section, which is the third gate on the left. It's a pretty small cemetery. I was here, I guess it was a couple of years ago, visiting a couple of gravesites. I visited the gravesite of Catherine Card. She played Mrs. McGillicuddy, Lucille Ball's mom on the I Love Lucy show. Remember her? I shared that video on my other channel, on the Graveyard channel, a couple years ago. And while I was here, I was also looking for the gravesite that I'm back to try to find today, but I couldn't find it at the time. It's here in the Jewish section. So this section here is the Jewish section, and it's a fairly small section, but there's still hundreds, if not thousands, of graves. This is the rest of the cemetery here, which is also fairly small, but the Jewish section is just from this third gate. When you come in the third gate here, it's just this section here. I have better directions this time, and I think I know where his gravesite is located, and so I think I should be able to find it today, and especially with the help of Marcia and Bobby. I don't know if the grandkids are going to come or not. I think Michaela does like to visit gravesites sometimes. I don't think Mason likes visiting gravesites that much, so he probably won't come today. But I actually came down to visit them today, and since I was coming down here anyway to visit them, I thought I would stop by and look for his gravesite once again. So we'll see if I can find it today. I think I should be able to, or we should be able to, with all of us looking. I think we should be able to find it. Of all the grave sites that I've been visiting lately, they've all been sad, but this one I think is particularly heartbreaking. I think this will just about break everyone's heart who's watching this. It's so incredibly tragic and such a senseless murder. Blaze Bernstein was 19 years old when he came home for holidays. He was Jewish, but he had the holidays off, the Christmas vacation from school. He was going to school back in Pennsylvania. He was in college, and he came back to visit his family. He grew up nearby, and that was also tragically where he was killed. Apparently, while he was back on vacation, and this happened back in 2018. So 5 years ago. And he reconnected with an old friend, a high school buddy. And unbeknownst to him, apparently, his high school buddy had changed a lot since high school. And I don't know if his friend lured him to the park or if they just agreed to meet in the park, but Blaze's body was found in the park. I believe it was almost a week after he had been murdered. He'd been stabbed to death by his friend. DNA evidence linked his friend to the crime. So I read a number of articles about this, but you don't always get all the details. But I'm guessing the way they found the killer is because his parents or someone must have known that the two were meeting and the two were going to be together that night. And I'm guessing that Blaze didn't realize that his friend had joined a hate group. I'm not going to even mention the hate group, but it's an anti-Semitic hate group, an anti-gay hate group. And apparently Blaze was openly gay, proud of being gay, 19 years old, 2018. A lot of young people his age these days are openly gay, and usually there's not too much to worry about, especially here in California. It's not a place you normally would associate with hate crimes, although they happen in every state, they happen everywhere, but not like they might in some other places, especially here in Orange County. Well, it is very conservative here, actually, in all of California. Orange County is probably one of the most conservative areas, and so you probably do have a lot more people involved in hate crimes. But Blaze was stabbed by his friend 19 times, and then his body was just dumped or left in the park, assuming that's where they met. And for 5 years now, the case against the killer has just really gone almost nowhere. I don't know, I couldn't tell by any of the articles if the killer was in jail, pending trial. He's had a number of different trial dates, and usually they've been postponed. They were postponed because of COVID for a couple of years, and then I guess his lawyers were trying to get him off on insanity defenses or other defenses, all the usual things they try to do to get away with crimes like this, and often they do get away with crimes like this. I read the last article I was able to find about court dates, said that he did have a court date earlier this year, 2003, I believe it was in January, and the judge did rule that he was fit to stand trial, but I couldn't find any information about a new trial date. So as far as I know, and nothing about him being sentenced, going to having a trial or being sentenced or anything. So it's been 5 years now, and it's still kind of in limbo, as far as I know. If any of you happen to know more about this case, if you happen to know any more about what happened to the killer, or if a trial ever did take place and I just haven't been able to find it online, please let us know in the comments section. And if you happen to know Blaze, please share more about him and his life in the comments section. It's always nice to keep the memories alive and to know more about victims like this. So often, as I've mentioned before, gay murder victims, I don't want to say they rarely get justice, but they don't always get justice that most of us would think would be just. The killers usually get off with just a slap on the wrist or very lenient sentences. At least in my experience, that's what I've noticed. Now, that's not always the case. I mean, sometimes they do get life in prison without the possibility of parole. That does happen sometimes, but so often these killers just get away with it because the person was gay, and juries aren't always sympathetic and sometimes very hostile to gay victims. I'm not saying that's happening in this case. I really don't know. So I would like to know. If any of you happen to know, please share with us. And now the Jewish community has really rallied around this story and around Blaze Bernstein. And there are a number of different websites that you can visit that talk about his life, that fundraise for good causes, charities that he would have supported. So jcfoc.org/Blaze. There's also a Facebook group called Kindness for Blaze, where they invite people to do a random act of kindness in Blaze's memory. I mean, I think that's really nice. And you can search Facebook for that. And then there's also blazebernstein.org, which shares more about his story and his life. And so it's really nice. Obviously, he has a family, a very loving family that wants to keep his memory alive. So I'm hoping that they would be happy that I'm visiting his gravesite and sharing it with all of you here to remember his short life. And also as a reminder that these things are still happening. Gay people and Jewish people are still being murdered regularly in 2023. So it's just a reminder. It's a sad reminder, but an important reminder to be careful. This is a really nice location back here. I think it's kind of nice that these homes are here, kind of overlooking his grave, keeping him company. I know that's probably silly, but personally, I always like it when grave sites are in more public places or places where there are lots of people around. Life is still going on. Have any of you been here to visit Blaze's gravesite? Share with us in the comments section if you have. Let me read this to you. It says, his life changed the world, Blaze Bernstein. Whatever you washed onto my shore, it taught me a lot about myself. Your sea glass touch and driftwood words changed the way I see the world. For that I can never repay you. And instead of an ending date, he has the eternity symbol. I'm guessing that might have been his poem because I think I read that he was a writer, but I think I read that he was also a poet.
Is that part of the site, the stone?
Yeah, well, people leave stones at Jewish graves just to show that they've been here and they remember.
That looks like a piece of the sea glass.
Well, I moved it because it was on top of the words. I moved it and then I read this, and I think that's a poem he wrote. And that's a sea glass, and he was writing about sea glass. Oh, is that why you thought it was there, because of the sea glass? See, I didn't even notice that at first.
He was even younger than Michaela.
He's what?
Younger than Michaela.
Yeah. Yeah, he was just 19 years old. Sadly, horrendous hate crimes like this can happen anywhere at any time, and they do on a regular basis. So if you're able to do something kind in Blaze's name, share with us in the comments section. If hundreds or thousands of us do an act of kindness in his name, it's not going to erase this hate crime, but hopefully somewhere in the universe, maybe it can have a positive effect and try to balance out some of the hate in the world. As always, thanks for joining me and for keeping Blaze's memory alive. Until our next trip to the graveyard together, thanks for sharing the memories, everybody.